Have you ever felt an inexplicable pull towards a place shrouded in mystery? Share your experiences or thoughts on folklore that blurs the line between myth and reality. I was 37 when I returned to Norfolk, older than I'd ever planned to be in that place. It had been nearly 20 years since I'd last stepped foot near the fens, and even then, I'd only passed through, windows up, heart closed. The air back then had felt heavy with memory, as if the marsh itself held breath. Now it simply felt expectant. I came back not for nostalgia nor family loyalty. If I'm honest, I came because I'd run out of other places to go. London had exhausted me. The city devours men like me, quiet men, who don't drink much or argue often or sleep particularly well. Uncle Henry had written me a letter, a real one, posted and stamped.
The house has gone strange again. It's in the walls, I think, not rats.
There was no greeting, no signature, but the handwriting was unmistakable, slanted like wind-warped branches, black ink that bled slightly through the yellow paper. I could feel the salt in it. The train dropped me in a town that barely existed anymore, Wroxham, or what was left of it. From there, I hired a cab to take me east toward the waterlogged coast. The driver was younger than me by 10 years, but spoke with the weariness of someone older. When I mentioned the fens, his eyes narrowed.
Not many go there anymore, not unless they're called.
Called? I asked, already regretting it. He shrugged.
Some say the widow still sings, but she never sings for you, only through you.
He left me at the edge of a long gravel drive, said nothing more, and reversed down the road so fast he almost clipped his own bumper on a rusted gate. The house was worse than I remembered, a crumbling Georgian skeleton perched like a drunk on the lip of the marsh. Ivy choked the chimney, and the left-hand shutters flapped like broken wings in the wind. The roof slouched. Something dead had been nailed above the door, a shriveled horse skull, maybe, or a deer, a tradition I never asked about. I knocked once. The sound barely registered. The door opened before I could try again. Uncle Henry looked like something that had been left in the rain too long, tall, soaked through with decades, eyes like gray puddles. Didn't expect you to come.
I didn't expect to come.
He let me in without further talk, and I crossed the threshold of a home I'd long ago exiled to dream. The air inside was damper than outside, if that's possible. You could smell the wood rot, the rising mold, the decades of shut-in sorrow. We ate in silence. Salted meat. Boiled potatoes. He still cooked like someone who didn't believe in flavor. Or maybe he just lost the sense of it. By the fire, he poured a glass of something brown and handed it to me with a small nod.
It's the season again,
He muttered, staring into the flame.
She's been quiet all year, but the cold brings her back. They always said water remembers.
Who? I asked, but I knew. They'd called her the widow of the Faun. Some said she'd been a war bride whose lover never returned. Others whispered she'd murdered him herself and tossed him into the Blackwater, then walked in after. Some said she was never human at all, just the Marshes' old hunger, dressed up in story. What stayed the same in every telling was her song, a voice not quite your own, or exactly your own, calling from the fog. I didn't believe any of it. Not really, but that night, As I lay on the lumpy mattress in the upstairs room, something tapped on the window. 3 taps. Slow. I told myself it was a branch. The tree outside was too far away. Sleep came in pulses, dull, dreamless waves that broke every time the wind changed. Around 3 in the morning, I awoke to the unmistakable sound of weeping, soft, drawn out, like someone mourning beneath their breath. It seemed to come from the far end of the hall, from the stairs. I lay there listening, not breathing, until the crying stopped, and I swear to you, just before silence fell, I heard my name.
Edward.
The morning came gray and wet. The marsh stretched endlessly beyond the garden fence, a still, oily expanse of water and tangled grass. The mist clung low, like wool across the land. I asked Uncle Henry if he'd heard anything. He didn't look at me when he spoke.
You only hear her if she remembers you, if she wants you.
I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I needed to prove something to myself, to him, to the silence in my chest. I've never even been here long enough to forget me, I said. He turned, eyes sharp now. Not puddles, blades.
That's what makes it worse.
That was my first night. I told myself I'd stay 3 days, no more, but the marsh had a way of blurring time, of softening edges, of replacing reason with rhythm. I'd come to visit, but I had already returned. Uncle Henry didn't speak much during the days, but when the sun dipped below the fin and the lamps cast shadows like ghosts on the walls, his tongue loosened. Stories, mostly. Old ones, and every single one circled back to her.
She doesn't drag them under,
he said once, poking at the fire with a rusted iron rod. Not right away. I was seated in the high-backed chair beside him, nursing another glass of the molasses-colored drink. It burned, but not enough to distract. Not enough to dull the unease curling inside me.
She gets in their heads, twists them. You don't drown in the fun. You drown in yourself first.
I tried to smile, as if this were just a fireside fable. Sounds like you're describing madness, not a ghost. Henry didn't laugh.
What's the difference?
He told me about Tom Bell, a fisherman from the next village who used to trap eels in the western shallows. Came home one night mumbling in a woman's voice. Not his voice. His wife said it was too soft, too sad. He'd whisper things in his sleep that weren't in English. One morning, Tom walked into the water holding a lantern. He never came back. They found the lantern still burning on a tuft of moss. No trace of him. No footprints.
Or Mrs. Dolly.
Henry continued. She'd been widowed 30 years. Claimed the widow would sit at the edge of her bed some nights.
Just watching, she'd said.
Like she's trying to remember me. Or remind me. They found her dead in her armchair. Mouth wide open. No wounds, but she'd bitten her tongue nearly clean through. I wanted to believe these were just old men's stories, damp minds and colder hearts keeping warm by fear. But the way Henry spoke, it didn't feel like he was repeating a tale. It felt like confession.
You've heard her too,
I said. It wasn't a question. He didn't deny it.
Every winter, he said, voice barely above a whisper, since your mother died.
The name struck a chord I hadn't tuned in years. My mother had grown up here. but she'd fled the fun like it was on fire. Never talked about it. Not to me, not to anyone. She'd drowned in London, slipped on ice near the river, and vanished. They found her days later, tangled in reeds near Richmond Lock. I hadn't thought of her as connected to this place. Now, I wasn't so sure. That night, I dreamt of water. Dark, slow-moving water that glimmered without light. I stood knee-deep in it, something cold circling my legs. I couldn't see her, but I felt her behind me, breathing softly into my ear.
You came back.
I woke with the taste of mud in my mouth. The next morning, I walked the edge of the fun. The air was thick, clinging, and the ground shifted under my boots like something alive. Mist moved in deliberate ways, coiling, hiding. There were birds, silent ones, black-winged things with unblinking eyes. Near the far edge, I found a single shoe, a man's loafer, half sunk in silt. The leather was warped and chewed at the edges. Beside it, embedded in the mud, was a silver wedding ring. I picked it up. My fingers trembled. When I returned to the house, I found Henry in the attic. He sat by the window, staring out toward the water.
Found anything?
He asked without turning. I placed the ring on the sill beside him. He didn't touch it.
She never forgets, he muttered. She always leaves something behind.
I didn't ask what he meant. I was beginning to understand. That night, the weeping came again, but it was closer. I didn't stay in bed. I got up. I followed it. The stairs groaned under my weight. The crying grew louder, clearer. It wasn't mournful this time. It was angry, a low, guttural keening that pressed against my ribs. At the foot of the stairs, I saw her. Not directly, just a shape, a figure in the hallway, swaying, long hair like riverweed, pale skin wet with something that shimmered in the dark. She turned her head slightly, and I swear I saw my mother's eyes. Then she vanished. I didn't sleep after that, neither did Henry. He sat by the fire until dawn, whispering words I couldn't place. Gaelic, maybe, or something older. I need to leave, I said the next morning. Henry only nodded.
You can try.
I left the next morning. At least, I tried to. The lane leading out of the village was flooded. Not with rain. It hadn't rained in days, but the water stood still and black, as if it had risen deliberately to block the way. A few of the locals stood watching from a distance, their faces unreadable beneath hoods and scarves. None offered help, none moved. I reversed the car and turned back toward the cottage. I told myself I'd try again later, that it was a fluke. But the truth whispered beneath that she didn't want me to go. Inside, Henry was exactly where I'd left him, still sitting by the hearth.
I told you, he said without looking up. The fawn chooses.
I didn't answer. I didn't want to believe I was trapped. That night, the house creaked and shifted like a living thing. I couldn't tell what was wind and what was breath. When I finally drifted off, I dreamt I was underwater again. But this time, I wasn't alone. She stood across from me in the murky black, her skin bloated and blue-tinged. Her dress floated around her like ink in water. Her mouth moved, but no words came out, only the sound of rushing tide. Then, her hand reached forward, and it was my mother's hand. I woke gasping, hands clenched around the bed sheets like they were ropes pulling me down. Henry found me in the hallway hours later, eyes bloodshot and shaking.
"You're starting to remember."
"Remember what?" I asked.
"Why she knows your name."
He took me to the root cellar. I hadn't gone down there before. Some superstitious part of me avoided it. Like animals that sense rot before it shows, we descended the narrow stairs, each creak of the wood like a groan from beneath. He showed me a box, weathered wood, brass latch. Inside, photographs, dozens of them, old and faded women, men, children, all standing by the edge of the fawn, all looking back at the camera, and all wearing the same expression, as if they'd already drowned. And in one photo, grainy and curled at the edges, I saw my mother, a little girl standing in a white dress, staring at the camera from the same patch of water I'd dreamed of. Beside her, a woman in black, veil, bonnet, hand on my mother's shoulder.
"That's her, the widow."
I didn't speak. Couldn't. The widow wasn't just a ghost. She was part of our family's history.
"She's taken others, but not like you, not like your mother."
He explained, slowly, carefully, how the widow wasn't always a spirit. Once, she was a real woman. Margaret Ely, widowed before 30. Her husband died in the fawn, dragged under during a storm. She was pregnant at the time. Alone, the townsfolk turned on her, accused her of cursing the waters. When more men went missing, they blamed her again. Eventually, they found her body in the marsh. She'd bound her ankles and walked into the water. But some said she didn't die, not fully. The legend claims she made a pact with the fawn itself, its silence, its depth. In exchange for her suffering, it gave her eternity, but only if she gave something in return. Blood, names, memory. My family, it seemed, was bound to her. My mother had fled the place, but not the curse, and now I had come back. Henry pressed something into my hand, an old iron key.
"There's a chapel ruin on the north side,"
he said, "near the willow grove. You'll find what you need there." I asked him what I'd find. He didn't answer. I waited until dusk, took a lantern, walked the shoreline until the grass gave way to wet, mossy stone. The air grew colder with every step. I found the chapel by accident. Half buried in vines, swallowed by time, I used the key. Inside, it was just stone and shadow. But there, in the center, was a well, covered by rotted wood and rusted chains. I knelt beside it. And from its depths, I heard her voice again.
"You left me."
It wasn't angry, it was grieving. I leaned over the edge, the lantern casting a golden ring around the opening. Below, I saw water. Still, deep, and beneath it, a face. Her face. It looked like my mother. It looked like me. Then she opened her mouth, and I remembered. As a child, I'd fallen into the fun. My mother had pulled me out. I'd swallowed water, choked on silt. I remember her screaming, but not at me, at the water, at her. She'd made a deal, one soul for another, and the widow took her. I was never meant to come back. The well's water stirred. I backed away, dropping the lantern. Fire spilled across the moss and licked at the stone. I ran, through the trees, past the black-winged birds, toward the faint yellow lights of the house. Behind me, I swear I heard her whisper,
Next time, you stay.
I didn't sleep that night, not truly. I hovered at the edge of consciousness, haunted by the sound of her voice echoing in the back of my skull. Not loud, just steady.
You remember me now.
I found Henry at dawn, already awake, pouring black tea into 2 chipped mugs. He didn't look at me when he spoke.
You have to go back.
I know, I said. There were no more excuses left. No denying what I'd seen. She had my blood, my name, my memory, and she was waiting. I left the house barefoot. The path was soft with mist, and the wind didn't move the trees. It was like walking into a painting made of breath. The fen wasn't flooded now. The water had receded, clearing a narrow trail that led toward the oldest part of the marsh, where the trees bowed low and the air smelled of iron. The widow was there, not floating, not crawling, just standing as if she'd never left. She looked different this time, not waterlogged, but full, whole, beautiful, even like the sadness had shaped her into something eternal. Her voice was clearer now, no longer muffled, no longer buried in the sound of tides.
You've always belonged to the water.
I stood frozen, not in fear, but in some strange, ancestral recognition, like when you see a photograph of a great-grandparent and realize your own face stares back. You took her, my mother.
I offered peace, she chose sacrifice.
Behind the widow, the fen stirred. Tiny ripples formed in the shape of footprints, walking toward us across the surface of the water. I could see them now, others, figures standing just beneath the reeds, eyes just above the surface, waiting. Why me? I asked, my voice cracked. Why this? Her eyes softened. She stepped closer.
You carried the weight of forgetting. You came back because the dead never left you.
Then she lifted her hand, not as a threat, as an invitation. And I understood this was never about punishment. It was about memory, about honoring what we bury. People, pain, history. The fen wasn't haunted. It was the haunting. I stepped into the water. It was cold, but not biting. It accepted me like I had never left. The water rose to my knees, my waist, then to my chest. She took my hand. Her skin was no longer bloated or decayed. It was smooth, warm, familiar. And as I went under, I didn't feel fear. I felt remembered. They found me the next morning, lying at the edge of the fen, alive, barely, no signs of struggle, no wounds, but my hair had turned silver overnight, and when they asked me my name, I couldn't answer. They say the water is rising again, that the road is flooded, that people are hearing their names whispered from the marsh. I sit by the window every night now, staring at the mist, waiting, and sometimes, in the dark, I hear her voice.
Not yet.
But I know, one day soon, I'll go back. What do you think lies beneath the surface of Norfolk's marshes? If you have tales or legends from your region, we'd love to hear them. Comment below and let's delve into the unknown together.